please, anyone who might be listening to this, please make sure you figure out what truly matters to you first, and then figure out those things that
Yeah.
will lead you there. He has these 7 habits, but one is to begin with the end in mind. It's like, what kind of a person do I want to grow to be? We control them when we first set them, but if we get a habit in place, then that habit controls us. Now, if it's a bad habit, it's going to control us the wrong direction. If it's a good habit, it's going to move us in the right way. Every single day that you don't know, you're not going in a direction. It's like, well, I'll wait and do that next year. Well, then you're a year away from getting to where you could be. You've not utilized that time. I wouldn't say you wasted time, but you haven't utilized it to get where you want.
My name is Sam, and I'm on a journey to be successful, not just financially, but physically, socially, and spiritually. The purpose of this podcast is to learn how to do that. So I interview people I think we can all learn from. This is The Growth Apprentice. Welcome to the podcast. Could you introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about what you are, or who you are and what you do.
Yes, thanks, Sam. My name's Lynn Jones. I've kind of had 2 different careers in the past. I was an educator in a Nebo School District, teacher, principal, district office administrator. But for about 30 years, kind of overlapping that career, I've also been a corporate trainer, and I've put behind me some of the content that I like to train. I live in Spanish Fork, Utah. My wife and I have 4 children. We have 17 grandchildren, and family is very high on our list. I love to ride ATVs, all-terrain vehicles, and I love to play pickleball. So there's a little bit about me.
I love that. That's some great stuff. Sounds like a fun life you got at this point. So could you tell us a little bit more about what you do for work then at this point?
Yeah, at this point, I several times each month am with various groups from manufacturing, sometimes healthcare or banking, many education groups. And I'm a corporate trainer. I'm called a master trainer with a company called Crucial Learning. They were formerly known as Vital Smarts. The original authors wrote the 3 books you can see behind me: Crucial Conversations, Crucial Accountability, Crucial Influence. And then they have more recently teamed up with David Allen and Charles Duhigg with Getting Things Done and The Power of Habit. Then I put another book there for fun. My good friend Mark Carpenter, a fellow master trainer, wrote a book called Master Storytelling. And I believe storytelling is one of the important things we do. In fact, that's kind of what we're doing today, Sam, is doing a little storytelling.
Yeah, that's cool. Out of those 3 topics, there was Crucial, Conversations, Accountability, and Influence, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. Which one do you think is the most important to start improving and to learn about?
Well,
or are they all crucial? You gotta know them all.
They are all crucial. There's kind of a starting place. The Crucial Conversations book has actually been turned into a full 2-day training. We often deliver it virtually in shorter segments, but it's all about mastering dialogue. In other words, how do you talk to people when the stakes are high and when maybe you disagree about things? And in our modern world, we got a problem with disagreement. Like our governor here in Utah, Governor Cox, says we need to learn to disagree better. And that's what these skills help us do. And even today, Sam, as we're playing out, we have Congress not disagreeing very well. And they've shut down all of government here in the United States. And it scares a lot of us because we have people not running our government. It's gonna affect travel. It's gonna affect many other things. And so my heart goes out to those people, because at the basis of that is dialogue, being able to talk about where you agree.
So Crucial Conversations, what do you think the difference is between disagreeing and then just not saying anything? Like, how do we disagree with people and still respect them so that we can all learn and we can all grow?
What a great question. See, one of our human tendencies is, if we disagree with someone, then we tend not to say anything. And in the training, we call that going to silence. And it's the idea that we're not truly expressing our opinion and our feelings about things. Now, what's unfortunate about that is we'll often go to silence for a while, and maybe someone's mistreated us for a while, or we disagree for long enough, and then we might blow up. And then we'll use what we call verbal violence where maybe we yell and maybe we're not appropriate. So we like to say that we tend to get ourselves stuck. And when we're stuck, it means we're either not holding crucial conversations or we're not holding them well. And so the idea is to identify those conversations where we need to go talk to someone, we need to understand what they're talking about and hopefully help them understand what we're talking about and to see if we can seek mutual purpose and come to a conclusion and success.
Yeah. Out of curiosity, have you ever had a time when you were talking with someone who originally you disagreed with, but after listening, your view was changed after really listening to them?
Yeah, it's interesting how that's gone both ways. Times when I felt like I really knew and and then I find out, you know what, maybe I didn't know as much. And then maybe the opposite where they thought they really knew and then we didn't know as much. There was a really interesting time when I was an elementary school principal and some parents came to me and they came to me to talk about a couple of different things, but one of the ideas was they wanted to have their daughter be in a grade above where the daughter was. And we had some discussion about that, and I, being the regular educator, talked to them about all the natural negative consequences. They shared really interesting things to me about their daughter, about her likes and dislikes and the other children in her grade level. And when I was done, I thought, wow, I think you're right. You're the parents. You understand better. Let's do it. And at that time, I had the authority to make that change. And it was really fun about 10 years later to run into the mother of this girl and for her to tell me how successful the girl has been and how grateful she was that I listened to them and understood and followed through. So there's one of those examples.
That's so cool. It's interesting how it always comes down to just understanding each other because we all have different viewpoints and beliefs. And like in their case, they knew all about their daughter and what would be best for her, and it was able to benefit fit her the most in that way. I think that's really cool. Yeah. So what's the next one? Crucial accountability. That one is a big one, is having accountability. Why do you think that's important?
Well, it's interesting because when the book was originally published, it was called Crucial Confrontations, and people had a hard time with the word patience, so it was republished with the word accountability, which is a big word in our world. And the idea is that in our world, we set expectations. So you might see a slope. We expect people to do certain things. For example, we'll put a sign on the freeway that says you should go a certain speed. And then people might often meet that expectation, but other times they might go too fast, too slow. And whenever there's a large gap between what we expect and what we observe, then that's something we want to hold that person accountable for. And what crucial accountability does is it helps us first have tools to diagnose why people are doing what they're doing. And there's it's called the six source model. We talk about personal, social, and structural barriers that are keeping a person from doing what they should or doing things they shouldn't. And then once we understand, then we use that same model to help kind of prescribe, like a doctor would. Here's some things we can do to help support them to change that behavior. And it's incredible how powerful that is. This next week, I'm going to be in Houston, and I'll be talking with a bunch of men who work on oil rigs out in the middle of an ocean. And they have to live on these oil rigs for like 28 to 30 days at a time, working 12-hour shifts. And safety is huge concern with all the things that could happen on an oil rig out in the deep ocean. And so the whole idea is for them to learn how to hold each other accountable for safety measures, how to talk to each other about whether the rooms have been cleaned or whether they've taken care of each other, whether they've shown respect to each other. So these kinds of skills are paramount to have high safety, but for me, it's also to be happy. I'm much more happy in
Yeah.
life. I understand why people are doing what they're doing, then I'm not judging.
Yeah. Why do you think it's important for younger like guys like me to have a lot of accountability built into their life? Because I think a lot of guys would just want to do whatever they want, but it's not fun and it doesn't bring happiness.
I think one of the first things to learn is to learn how to hold yourself accountable, and, and I would say there's a step back. One of the books I don't have behind me that I have also trained a lot is called Seven Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. And what Stephen Covey talks about is that idea that we first figure out what's most important to us. So he has these 7 habits, but one is to begin with the end in mind. It's like, what kind of a person do I want to grow up to be? So I look at you as a young man, you got your whole life in front of you. What do you picture yourself being in a few years from now? And if you could picture that and then decide what are 2 or 3 things that if I did all the time would help me become that man, help me become that person. And then can I hold myself accountable to do it? Or am I gonna give in to the addiction I call the sleeping in addiction, which is it's pretty hard when you're a teenager because you're tired, but, every time you sleep in a little extra, you just missed out on some time. The most productive time of the day is in the morning. So I would give the advice, try to carve out a few minutes in the morning to do a few of those things, those habits that'll make you help you become the person you want to be.
Yeah, I like that. Do you think that all guys should have some kind of morning routine that is built to help them do those things they want to do?
Absolutely. And when you said morning routine, I think you hit the nail on the head because I believe it's the morning routine that begins the day. And so
Yeah.
if you can figure that out. Now it's like me, as I wake up, the first thing I do is roll to my knees because the first thing I like to do is pray. That's why I have that picture behind me when I'm sitting here is praying that's how I start my day. But my day has several tasks, beginning tasks that deal with my health and my well-being, my spiritual well-being, as well as my physical well-being. And if I do those tasks every day, then I begin to see true benefits, and I can look back a month or 2 or a year, and I say, "Hey, I've made progress. Even though I'm getting older, I'm making progress in many of those areas."
Yeah. Yeah. It's so motivating, I would say, to be able to look back and kind of just be thankful to your past self about for doing those things and staying disciplined because then you just keep building an even better life. And it's really cool to be able to see the progress there.
It is.
Yeah. For me, I've noticed that even though like you can take a month-long goal, like maybe working out or something like that, and although you might not see immediate results, there is the delayed gratification, but then also during the day too, like you'll have more energy versus like, and if you read your scriptures in the morning, like you're gonna feel better throughout the day. But it's not just the uh like just the future. Building those habits, it'll benefit the current day as well. And I thought that was really cool. It's just you get extra energy and stuff like that. And there's always benefits in the now too, which I love.
I think there's a key thing you're saying there too, Sam, and it's the idea to recognize the success. Even though it's might be minimal day by day, but if we look back after a month or 2 months at something we've done and say, "Oh, wow, look how I can do that. Look how I can do more of that. Look at the difference." So, for example, one of the things I tried to do, and I've done it every day for 10 years, it's a habit of quiet meditation every morning, anywhere from 10 to 20 minutes. My purpose in starting that is that I could be more calm, that I could be a better listener, that I could help people with that. And it's really hard to measure that with great metrics. But I think if you were to ask my family and say, "Hey, go back over that 10 years, what do you notice about me?" And they would say, "Well, you're more calm, you're more understanding, you don't jump to a conclusion quite as quickly, and you seem happier." And that's a key. What we need joy. That's what we need in our life. So all these things, they should have some joy. If our morning routine's so hard that we can't even stand to think about it, then it's probably too hard of a routine. We want it to be
Yeah.
things we reasonably do.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like the best workout or the best diet is the one that you're going to keep doing consistently because it doesn't matter if you can do it for a day. If you're not going to keep doing it after that, why even do it in the first place? And so that's why there's so many different things that everyone can find ways to implement the principles that'll bring them a happier life.
Well said.
So I'm curious, when did you start building these habits and doing things to stay disciplined and
I think I naturally did a lot of those things as a part of serving a mission for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Many years ago, clear back in 1976 to 1978, I served a full-time mission in Finland. Finland is a tough place because it's cold, and in the winter, it's dark, and those daily habits of getting up early, studying my scriptures, getting in some exercise, and then following that day-by-day routine, I think is where I began to understand the benefits and how much fun it was to do that. Um, I think during the time from my mission until I was probably well into my time as an educator, I had done okay because I'd been to college. I'd received 3 different degrees. I had done well. But it was when I met the authors of those first 3 books we talked about, um, 33 years ago was when I met them. Um, they really helped me systematically organize myself. So I think I was doing some things by nature, but after meeting them and studying their content and putting it into practice, that has given me a systematic way every day to continue to do those things that I found gave me joy, I found made me happy.
yeah, why do you think it's important to build a system around the things that you want to do every day?
If you don't have a system, you're kind of a funny term, but you're willy-nilly. You're all over the place. You know, you might wake up one morning and do one thing and another morning do another thing, and you're not building step over step. You're not building a system. And if you don't build, if you don't stack those days, you're not gonna do well. So, yeah, whether it be physical fitness, whether it be your health, whether it be your spiritual growth, if you don't do it consistently. Now, you're gonna miss a day here or there with different things. I mean, I never mess with meditation, but there's days I might miss exercise or days I might miss a scripture study. But if you're consistently building, it makes a difference. And if I don't have in mind those things I'm going to do, who knows? I might not do any of them. I might end up scrolling. So I talked about the habit that people get stuck in of sleeping too long. Another habit is getting stuck with social media,
Yeah,
with scrolling mindlessly for long periods of time. I'm not saying that social media is bad. In fact, I think it really serves great purposes, but I know how addictive it can be to just get stuck there. And then all of a sudden, 15, 20, 30 minutes later, you think, wow, what have I done in the last little while? What have I accomplished? Have I moved toward
yeah,
where I
yeah, and then you fall into that guilt cycle because you know that you did waste your time and it wasn't productive. What would you recommend to guys that think they're definitely spending too much time online, not doing anything to get closer to their goals?
I think if they could recognize the entry point, okay, I'm gonna do some scrolling, I'm gonna look at some stuff. I suggest set a timer for whatever amount of time. I'm gonna give myself 5 minutes. I'm gonna give myself 10 minutes, and then make sure that after that time, then something productive, something that fits into that overall goal of where I want to be, that I at least do 1 or 2 activities that move me there before I allow myself back to do that kind of thing. And I think this probably falls to, and a lot of your listeners aren't gonna like this, but I think video games are really fun and I enjoy them, but I believe those 2, you would benefit from setting a timer and saying, "I'm gonna allow this much time, and then I'm gonna move on to some of these other activities that will be productive." I'm not saying it's completely unproductive because maybe it gives rest and relaxation, but I think it can be overdone, and I think anyone who says, "No, you can't do that," I think they're fooling themselves. I don't think they're really figuring that out. So my idea is a timer, and a timer worked for me in almost all my life. My little Apple Watch here, I wear them out pretty quick because I'm using the timers. My battery gets worn out because I'm used timers when I'm presenting and training and speaking, and I use them to myself to keep myself on the path that I want to be on.
Yeah, I like that. Something that has worked incredibly well recently for me is I've installed this app and it'll make me do like 10 push-ups before I can get onto the app. And every 10 push-ups I do is a minute. And so then I can access it whenever I need to post content or see how videos are performing or something. But now there's a cost of entry, and so I'm less likely to just go on there randomly. And that's been really good for me. It's been fun.
I love that, and it's a win-win, as Stephen Covey would say, because
Yeah.
you're winning in doing the push-ups helps, but you're also winning that you're focusing on the things that matter most to you in life.
Yeah. And then it will kick me out after my time is up. And if I want to do 600 push-ups and be on there for an hour, I can, but it's however much I do, since it's a higher cost of entry, it's like cut my screen time down to like 10% of what it was before. So that was cool.
Well done,
Yeah.
congratulations. That's awesome.
Thanks. Yeah. What kind of why do you think habits are so important? Like, because you were talking about going willy-nilly in your life. We've talked about having structure, but why build like small, repeatable habits versus just trying to go in and change your entire life in one day?
Well, for one thing, you can't change your life in one day. We know that it doesn't happen. It happens incrementally, and it happens over a long period of time. One of those books behind me is called The Power of Habit, written by Charles Duhigg. I got to eat breakfast once with Charles Duhigg and talked with him, and I've trained his content for a long time now. Part of the idea is if that habits, we control them when we first set them, but if we get a habit in place, then that habit controls us. Now, if it's a bad habit, it's going to control us the wrong direction. If it's a good habit, it's going to move us in the right way. So my habit of meditation, that's been an incremental 10-year journey to just being better and more calm and less stressed. That had it been a bad habit of, say, maybe scrolling for hours on the internet somewhere, then I wonder, what did I ever learn, or where did I benefit? And that's the willy-nilly all over. That's the crazy thing about, so for example, whether it be Instagram or Facebook or whatever the app is, that you'll watch maybe a reel, and then the next one will be completely different, and then completely different, and it throws you all over. But the more you watch, then the more you get of certain ones. So if you're watching stuff that leads you the wrong direction, you're gonna get more of that, or vice versa.
Yeah.
So you can see the danger there. So because habits are so powerful and they have control over us, we want to set the habits that lead us to where we want to be and not allow us to just have bad habits. Uh, I got to tell you, when I was your age, Sam, people didn't wear seatbelts. Nobody wore seatbelts. And we just didn't. That was not a socially acceptable thing. And little by little, through various interventions, I don't remember what they are, we all got used to wearing seatbelts. And so now that's a habit. It's a habit that's saved thousands of lives if people just do that habit. And now I can't stand to put a car in drive without hearing the click. And if I got
Yeah.
my kids with me, I have to hear their click before I can start, move the car. And that's just one example of a tiny habit, but it saves lives. And we could talk about habits like brushing your teeth, drinking enough water. I mean, there's a lot of great habits that we can create. And if they build us the right way, then step by step, we find success.
Yeah. What are things you think that people can do to make it easier to do those habits? So it's the path of the least resistance.
I think one of the cool things is what we're doing now, using technology. Um, I think if people figure out on their own, there are apps. Mine's just a simple app, and this app is the one that I use to help me with getting things done. Another one that lists here. I use just the reminders app on my phone, and so having that app is there. So whenever I have an idea, here's something I should do. Here's something that, oh, I better not forget. I'm going to enter it. I'm going to capture it. And that's the key. I'm going to capture it. I'm going to either capture it in a next actions list, or I'm going to capture it in my calendar. And that way, so the whole idea here is your mind is for having ideas, but not for holding them. We don't wanna have hold those ideas because there's only so much capability that your brain has. So when I have an idea or a reminder of a commitment, if I can capture that and know that I will process it with my system, then I can take it off of my brain. I can give my brain some relief and some calmness. And then I know that the other half of that, there's several other steps, but the end of each week, I do what's called a weekly review where I go back over all of those commitments, all of those things on next actions list, all of those things in my calendar, and I decide, okay, I've committed to this. Is this still reasonable, or can I get this done today? And so to me, let's use technology. Let's hit it. Let's let guide us. I know I've not been a big chat GPT person, but I know a lot of people have used that to help them. Um, Maybe that'll come from me. Maybe I'm too old to get on that bandwagon, but I'm not too old to really use an app to keep track of what I want to get done, and an app to keep track of my commitments in my calendar.
Yeah, I like that, and it sounds like you've got a good system built around doing the things that you wanna get done. And I would assume, do you have, like, arching goals for your health, wealth, and relationships and stuff like that, and then what you do from the day to day and the weekly review is all tied into that?
Yes, I have I wrote it years ago. I have my own personal mission statement. I wrote it years ago when I first learned about Stephen Covey's whole idea of the 7 habits. And this personal mission statement, I look at it every single week, and it is divided into first starts out with the things that matter the most to me. And so my mission, my mission statement, the overall arching thing that guides me that I look at every week is that I want to consistently seek joy. And I've got listed these 3 things that I want to do to seek joy. First is connecting with God. Second is serving loved ones, family, friends, others. And third is savoring nature. So one of my other pieces of advice here is make sure you connect with nature. I believe that God talks to us through nature. And so I've got these 3 guiding principles that are there within it. But then I also put down posterity, creativity, and joy. So those are the words that guide me. And so that is something I look at every day, have done for decades now. I've listed in there my vital behaviors, things like prayer and meditation, and personal exercise, those kinds of things, service. And I've also listed the important roles, the things that I hope I'm good at in life, to be a good husband, a good father, a good grandfather, a good brother, and a provider for my family. And then I have metrics there that help me understand if I'm making progress or not. So I'll go down and look at those metrics and say, "Ugh, I've listed health goals like how much do I weigh? What's my heart rate? Those kinds of things." So that has been really important. And if anyone listening to us here wonders about that, go ahead and Google personal mission statement or Stephen Covey's 7 habits, and figure that out. The mission statement is definitely an individualized document, but it's one that'll guide your life toward where you want to go so that you stay on track there. So that at those times when you're wondering, man, am I tired? Do I want to do that? Well, I just looked at my mission statement, and it's important for me to serve loved ones, to find my joy. Hey, what can I do? Who needs my help? And then I can do those things.
Yeah. I think that's super cool, and I like how you just are in pursuit of what brings you joy, and a lot of it is I heard this analogy in a book that Morgan Housel wrote, and he talks about I think they touched on this in 7 Habits too, and in your obituary, no one is gonna talk about how many horsepower your car has or the type of house you live in. It's all gonna be about how you impacted other people and like what you did for them in the relationships. And I really like how you've built your mission statement around that, around serving others and doing things that bring you joy. I think that's really cool.
So Sam, just you mentioning that today, it's a little touchy for me because just today, just before I got on with you, I was at the funeral of a very good friend, a friend I've known for many decades. And I got to hear his children talk about him and what he was about, what his legacy was about. And they mentioned the things he did as a father to build his family, that how supportive he was of his grandchildren. And they listed what those things are in his legacy. And basically it came down to, and as I was listening to this, it's like, yeah, that is humbling because it makes me think, what do I want people to say at my funeral? It would be similar to those wonderful things I heard about my friend Dave today.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. I think it's important to, begin with the end in mind, like Stephen Covey says, and you gotta think of like when you die, what do you want people to remember? Why do you think that guys should start thinking about what they want their life to be and who they want to become, even if they don't think that they know yet? Why should they start anyways?
Because every single day that you don't know, you're not going in a direction that'll get you there. So it's kind of an interesting way to look at it. So it's like, well, I'll wait and do that next year. Well, then you're a year away from getting to where you could be. You've not utilized that time. I wouldn't say you wasted time, but you haven't utilized it to get where you want. And you don't have to have the whole idea figured out. You can think, well, where do I want to be in 2 years or 5 years? What are those kinds of things that I want to happen? And at least begin toward them. I would hope someone has at least the vision of 6 months to a year, what's important to them in that period of time, whether it be graduating from high school or maybe learning more about a specific subject. But every day that you don't have in mind where you want to be is a day that you're not moving toward that goal, that objective.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'd rather be working towards something that maybe the plan does change than
Sure.
not be working towards anything at all. Yeah.
That's probably another piece of good advice is don't get too upset when things change either. You know, uh, I went on my mission thinking I was going to be a lawyer. That was going to be my profession, and I was good at debate. I was good at public speaking, those kind of things. And on my mission, I fell in love with teaching. I fell in love with sharing the gospel with other people. And I found that I related really well with young people at that time. So when I came back, I switched my major to elementary education. And that's made all the difference. So you can't worry about a change, at least aim towards something and then adjust as you need to.
Yeah. I think that's really cool. Do you have anything else you think we should touch on that younger guys like me preparing for the rest of their life? Do you think anything else we should touch on that they would need to know?
I can think of a ton of things. There's like
Yeah.
10, 10
Yeah.
days worth of things behind me, but I'm just trying to think of what's truly important. I think if there's any one thing that I would suggest your listeners to do today would be to take some quiet, reflective time, preferably in nature, to really think about what matters the most to them. What are the most important things to them, the most important people, the most important feelings, the most important joys or successes, and write them down. And that's the first step to figure out what truly matters to you. And then one other step, try to think of what are one or two or three things that if I did regularly, hopefully daily, would lead me toward achieving that. If your thing's as simple as, I would just like to get along better with a sibling or my parents. Well, I can tell you, one of the things you can do for them is to pray for them. The next thing you can do is to compliment them. The next thing you do is show appreciation to them. So there's three things you can do to lead toward that goal. And I believe, and I'm just you pulling that goal out as an idea, but first figure out what your goal is, and then figure out what are the habits, what are the actions, what are the behaviors that I can do that lead me to that. So that'd be my overall thing. Please, anyone who might be listening to this, please make sure you figure out what truly matters to you first, and then figure out those things that will lead you there.
Yeah. I love that. Is there any resources that you think the listeners should go and check out if they haven't already?
Well, I purposely put 6 of them back behind me, so if anybody's looking, uh, I believe reading is important. Now I realize in modern day, people like listening and accessing things in other ways. All of the subjects that we've talked about, which, and we talked a lot about a lot of different things in these few minutes, they're all accessible through other media and other ways. But I would suggest look into these kinds of things. I would add that Seven Habits book. I gave that book to, I've given it to several of my grandchildren. Um, it really highlights things, but try to be reading or learning somehow, either listening or watching podcasts or YouTube videos that share these kinds of improvement types of ideas, and I believe you'll find success.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. If you're always learning, then you'll always be getting better.
Lifelong learner. Let's be those.
Yeah, I like that. Well, thank you for coming onto the podcast today. It was a pleasure to have you. I learned a lot, and I think the listeners are going to learn a lot too, because these are principles that will benefit people all throughout their lives.
Thank you, Sam. It's been a pleasure to get to know you a little bit better. I've been around you and watched you, been impressed by you, but this has been fun for me to get an idea of the wonderful things going on within your brain. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for listening to the show today. Really, I appreciate that. If you found value from this, then please share it with a friend, leave a review, and follow the show, because that will help us reach more people so we can all learn what true success is.